Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another forecast by Adrian's Weather Forecast. And it's going to be a pretty exciting video for those who love the winter because it's going to be my first thoughts on the 2021-22 winter season. So typically I have these videos out in around late July, but I decided to have this video out early because a lot of you guys have been asking about it. So I just decided, since there's not really much other than the Eastern Pacific to talk about, I decided to talk about winter since I talked about fall around 2 weeks ago. So why not mention winter? But before we get in the video, if you guys like winter forecast, fall forecast, overall daily forecast, I would recommend you guys subscribe to this channel, specifically if you like fall and winter content, because a lot of that will become more frequent in my channel as well with the tropics. So be sure to smash the subscribe button, like this video, and as well share the bell icon or click that bell icon so you can get notified as soon as I post a video. But without further ado, let's get in the forecast. So the first thing I want to look at is the Nino 3.4 region in the Central Pacific Basin, which can help us get a better idea whether we have a La Nina type status, Enzo type status, La Nina type status, neutral type status, and a El Nino type status. Now, right now, we are still sitting at the neutral phase. We did get pretty darn close to a El Nino type status. Obviously, you have to have that for a few weeks to confirm it, but we basically got up to possibly positive 0.35. It was definitely pretty darn close to that positive 0.5 mark. But at this point, we have had a pretty large drop. At this point, we're sitting at basically positive 0.171. So we're still kind of sitting at that positive side on that neutral. So for those who don't know, you need a positive 0.5 or above to have El Nino type status, and a negative 0.5 status or below to have La Nina type status, and then in between that, which is obviously all of this, will be a neutral. So we are expected to be a neutral quite for quite a while here. So we're not expecting to see any El Nino or La Nina type convergence until later in late fall and possibly even early winter, according to the Enzo forecast. So overall, we are expecting to see this possibly upward and then downward trend on and on throughout the summer months. So we are expecting to have an Enzo as we continue throughout the summer. But as we go later into the early fall, we are expecting that maybe for this to go to a further downward trend. So there is a chance this could very well be a La Nina by the time we actually get to the winter season. So this could very well be another La Nina type season for the winter. So we may see in their type of possibly even effect. But obviously last year's La Nina was quite weird. Obviously we saw more of an El Nino type season because of the frequent negative AOs or Arctic oscillations bringing in Windstorm Uri and all those deep southern snowstorms. But that's definitely that obviously can't be ruled out this year. But obviously that La Nina was definitely very weird. So just because we may see another La Nina this year does not mean we're going to be seeing more deep southern snowstorms, because typically you see the complete opposite when it comes to La Nina. Typically see a lot drier and warmer for the south. So we're just going to keep a very close eye on this. And what's actually interesting is that we just got a La Nina watch once again. It's been a few months since we've had a La Nina watch, but we now have another one as we're getting towards that downward trend. So at this point, Enzo neutral conditions are present, and the SSCs are near average across most of the Pacific Ocean, which is why we're sitting at a Enzo neutral. We are sitting at a neutral at this point because most of the waters are basically average, and if they are slightly above average or slightly below average, we're basically darn close to getting, I guess, pretty darn close to getting into that La Nina phase at this point. But we do have an Enzo neutral favor throughout the northern hemisphere for summer into fall. So we have 51% chance for the August-October season that we are still going to be seeing a neutral, but obviously that's a 51%, so obviously leaving that other probability there for a La Nina. But a La Nina potentially emerging during the September and November season, so kind of like I just say, maybe in the later fall, and lasting through the 2021 to 2022 winter with a 66% chance during November and January. So we do have a 66% chance for a La Nina emerging during the winter, like I did say. So there's definitely very, very high likelihood that we do, or I guess increasing likelihood that we do see a La Nina emerging by late fall into early winter, which obviously not only affect this winter but as well the tropics. Let's not go ahead and get a look here at the overall, I guess, zoomed in model. So let's actually zoom in this really quickly. And as you can tell, we do have a very good chance of continuing probability wise to have a neutral as really late as September. You can kind of see through, let's see here. This is actually going to be June, July, August, July, August, and September. So you can see as late as September, we still do have up to a 60-ish% chance, obviously favoring for a neutral, and then we do have around a 30% for La Nina. But as we get down to August, September, and October, you can see not only is the neutral probability decreasing, but the La Nina probability is increasing, getting them very, very close to 50-50. So at this point, for August, September, and October, kind of getting to the time frame like we mentioned earlier on, there is going to be 50% chance for neutral and then around a 45% for La Nina. And as we now get into September, October, November, then we have the La Nina having the greater probability, and that'll continue to skyrocket that probability for La Nina, specifically in the November, December, and January timeframe, where we have that 66% chance. And then as we get now into the possibly late winter, possibly early spring, we may have a possibility for the neutral coming back, but there's very low chance that we will continue to see this neutral throughout the whole year. Obviously, almost 1% chance basically for any El Nino probability. We're really, like I did say, focusing on neutral for summer and then continue to be an upward trend for La Nina as we go to late fall and early winter. So let's actually move my screen a little bit. So here's now a look at the overall models kind of forecasting the future, whether it's going to go to a La Nina, neutral, or even El Nino. And as you can see, obviously right now we're still looking at the neutral phase, but as we get now, let's see here. So this is actually quite old because we have May. This is obviously a little bit older because this actually looks like this came out in possibly May. So obviously we were not here in May whatsoever. We're way up here now, but you can kind of see the majority of this kind of want to have it getting either very close or even surpassing the negative 0.5. So there is still that iffy on whether it's going to be neutral or La Nina, but it looks like the majority are keeping this as a neutral. But again, this is an older map, but we still have a good plenty that want to have this to a La Nina once we get to late fall. And for those who do not know what El Nino and La Nina are, it's basically weather patterns that are all basically based on the SSTs in the Pacific, basically an idea with the 3.4 region specifically. So what does an El Nino bring for the United States specifically? So typically, in an average El Nino year, not every single one, like last year, La Nina was basically an El Nino condition-wise, but statistically, number-wise, it was still a La Nina. But obviously, every El Nino and every La Nina can be different, although they are both fit under the same expectations. So for an El Nino, it's definitely pretty darn good for me. If you're wondering why it's good for me, it's because I love snow and I live in Georgia. So obviously, El Nino is the year that favors southern snowstorms, specifically the southeast, and as well bringing maybe even some good snowstorms down there in the southwest. But we have that subtropical jet coming in from portions of the subtropics, and then we do have that jet stream kind of associated within that trough, and basically that's going to bring in some very dry air within that large, strong ridge in Canada. That's going to kind of keep that warm air specifically centered for the northern United States and for portions of the Canada, for portions of Canada. Because of that ridge, it's not only going to be warm, but it's going to be quite dry, specifically for the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. So what you typically don't see in El Nino years is big, strong Great Lake blizzards that eventually push into the northeast, like a gale, intense snow, even large blizzard for the northeast. That's typically what you don't see in La Nina years. Typically, you see some, you'll still see obviously a good amount of snow here, but below average because of how warm and dry it is typically for those 4 months. But because of that subtropical jet, and we kind of have that cold there, kind of, I guess, sticking around for the southeast longer than expected. And we have that moisture right there that's going to all allow for that frozen precipitation and allow for some good snow chances, not only for the obviously northern United States because they get snow every single year, but even a very good chance and even slightly above average snowfall chances and even slightly above average precipitation chances overall. So it's kind of what you typically expect for an El Nino year, which is why I said it's kind of good for me. But overall, things can vary. But what does a La Nina bring? It's basically the complete opposite. So actually, we kind of have that cold, high pressure, basically outside near the Bay of Alaska, and you see that Pacific jet basically bringing in kind of that following that moisture. You see that polar jet bringing in those Arctic blasts. So it's going to be basically with that Pacific jet and that polar jet, you're going to be seeing that precipitation kind of meeting with that deep cold air. And this is typically what you see associated with the positive Arctic oscillations, that very cold air associated in Canada with that warm air kind of sticking around across the United States. So it's typically we kind of see a colder or a cooler Arctic circle, and then these cold fronts kind of push in towards Canada. So typically we see in a positive Arctic oscillation. So when you see that moisture coming off in the Pacific Northwest, meeting with that cold air, is exactly why you see some big snowstorms, even big significant blizzards across the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Northwest, and even eventually pushing into the Northeast in La Nina years. And that's exactly what we saw. Gale is obviously a reasoning for those La Nina type conditions. However, the complete opposite for the south. Although El Nino is obviously very good for snow and overall precipitation, it's the complete opposite for La Nina, as we see very warm and dry conditions. So it's going to be kind of that stubborn southeastern ridge, just bringing us really warm and dry overall conditions, not much precipitation. Obviously, there is still going to be snowstorms in some of these areas. There's still going to be cold fronts, but they're just not as frequent as they are in El Ninos. So let's now go ahead and get here look at the monthly outlooks on the on the NOAA page. So let's go ahead and look now at the next few months, looking at 3.5 months out, looking at here. This is going to be for October, November, and December. So it's kind of including when that La Nina is likely and even expected to arrive. Although this is still very far out, and basically it's basically useless looking at this because how far out it is and how incorrect it's going to be. But typically when you kind of go far out, a lot of these maps want to have it just above average. They don't want to show below average when you go far out. That's what long range models do. That's kind of what we're seeing here. So let's take specifically, we're looking at a decent La Nina year. You kind of see the average, maybe slightly below average temperatures here for the northern United States, but very darn warm temperatures for the Southwest overall. So you can kind of get a better idea, but overall, really want a warm Southwest and overall Eastern United States. Precipitation wise, they want to have below average precipitation for much of the southern United States and kind of get a better idea. That's kind of what we just named. It's basically La Nina type conditions. Let's now go ahead and get a look at the 4.5 month outlook. This is basically looking at November, December, and January, so deeper into winter. Still very warm and even actually very dry for the southern United States. You can kind of see overall, this is definitely dry across the United States and very warm across the southern United States. So overall, we're kind of getting an idea. It's going to be typically like maybe even La Nina conditions. December, January, and February as well. Overall, so that really warm and dry conditions for the southern United States. So we're kind of getting the gist of this, basically.